Thanks for joining us, Whit. Let's start off with David Teal.
Whit, thanks for doing this. And Dr. Rogers, I don't know if you were listening earlier, mentioned earlier that Myrtle Beach had been a hot spot. Caleb Farley specifically mentioned in his essay that players were going to Myrtle Beach. One, were you guys aware of that? And do you have any idea how many went?
I don't know if that's accurate. I'm certainly not saying accurate, but that, to my understanding, if they went, it was a while back, but no, I'm not sure when that was, no.
Okay. And then just in terms of the ACC plan that was put out last week, it gave everyone the option of not even having non-conference competition in the fall Olympic sports. Have you determined what your path will be there?
As far as the Olympic sports, David, all fall sports, is that what you're referencing?
Yeah, because it said you can play the minimum number of conference games to meet
Sure.
the NCAA requirement.
Sure. So the ACC board, which is made up of the presidents, as y'all know, it's an aspirational goal. If we're safely able to do it, yes, we want to advance all 7 fall sports with competitions starting between the 7th and 12th of September. As far as the Olympic sports goes, the way that would work theoretically, David, is you may get your ACC minimum games in. You may even play double headers, stay there and play the same team twice, and then they would leave the Olympic sports scheduling up to each school to schedule locally, who else can meet the testing protocols, bus trip, et cetera. So the ACC games would be the minimum, but as of now, with the current guidelines, we would have the ability to schedule some non-conference games locally at our discretion.
Chris Coleman.
Yeah, Whit, I don't think anybody's really talking about the financial burden on athletic departments when it comes to testing. How much does it cost to test these guys? And if you had all the student athletes together on campus at one time, how much would it cost you to test them all on a weekly basis?
Yeah, and we've had people look at that. Right now, it's a pretty darn good arrangement, and I don't want to imply that we wouldn't cut money for health purposes. Right now, fortunately, while there are some expenses, our relationship with Carillion, BCOM, Fralin Biomedical, the testing right now for us is quite reasonable. But it is a 6-figure number, at least to do it right, I would estimate.
Mike Nizilik.
Has there been any decision about what to do with season ticket holders? And at what point, maybe you have decided, but capacity for the stadium for home games, at what point does that decision need to be made and communicated to fans? And have you decided on that already?
Sure. So fans in the stands, it could be no fans. Certainly that's not optimal. Potentially up to 50%. I believe we talked a week or two ago with our campus teams, health officials, et cetera. We would probably land somewhere on 30 to 36% capacity. The suites we may do differently, where that would be at your own risk and people could decide how many they wanted up there, et cetera. But we have to be careful with that language. But that's how we're looking at it now. Obviously, if you also have students on campus, but for some reason they're not able to go to classrooms, it would be pretty tough to justify having a student section, right? So it's this continual narrative of what would we do for a general student, and our athletes are general students who just happen to play sports at a really high level. And what was the second part of your question, Mike? I may have missed it.
How are you approaching season tickets? If you have 50%, how do you just choose, how do you kind of split that up? How do you approach that?
Sure. Like most schools, we've given a few options. If we play, we'd love to have you, and we feel like with the season tickets we've sold, that may work out. We've paused individual game tickets. We've done that. You could get a refund if we don't play. You could make your ticket a gift to the Hokie Club. You could pay it forward for the following year. So there will be a lot of options if people are in a position to help us. great. And if times are tight and they want a refund, we understand that as well. But we're not quite to that point yet. And we're not to the point yet on fans. I don't believe anybody in the ACC has officially announced that part yet.
Now we'll go to Norm.
Hey, Whit.
I know.
Couple things. How satisfied have you been with the level of testing and the results that have come from that testing? I know you guys haven't released any results from that. Are there any concerns about where it is headed to this point? And the second part would be, it's been brought up a couple times to Dr. Rogers, but you're close to having at least a certain percentage of the student body back on campus, several thousand more kids, obviously. How much of a concern is that now that you're going to have to deal with that factor with the athlete component?
Yeah, thank you. And Norm, you know I'm not great on multi-part questions. So we're going to have to go.
I can remind you.
Come on now. As far as comfort level with the testing, very much so considering the era we're in, meaning Virginia Tech health officials have looked at it, the Virginia Department of Health, the CDC guidelines through Dr. Hainline and the NCAA's chief medical advisor, the ACC's medical advisory group, which Mark Rogers sits on, which is led by Duke, and then they combine with all the Power 5 leagues. So I'd have to say we're running the play that was called as best practices, and that we, according to Mark, he told me yesterday that we even go a little above and beyond what the requirements are. So while we're all anxious and watching it, I don't know what we could do better. And then I'm pleased with the testing amounts. I'm pleased with the results. The FERPA component that I think Mike Barber asked about, just the way Virginia Tech looks at it, the FERPA guidelines as shared by the Department of Education in response to COVID, it can't be used to distinguish or trace an individual's identity directly or indirectly. And campus has always taken this position as students and protecting their rights that way. When we just have student athletes back, Corps of Cadets, maybe some band members, they felt like that would indirectly identify some people. I do know that the president is very interested to share, and I know that they will be developing an outward-facing dashboard for all students that's updated each day on this, that, and the other. And I realize y'all's day job, you know, sometimes when people don't report in this era, in the absence of information, rumors will come in there. And I know you guys have to ask those questions. But really all we're doing is following what the university tells us. It's legally sound. And that's the way we've always done it. But I also know Dr. Sands is very anxious to try to give comfort to our student athletes, our students, and others. So there's a lot being worked on there.
And then the adding several thousand more students to the mix and how that
Correct.
complicates issues for your athletes, considering the fact that they've got to go to class at some point.
It absolutely does. And campus knows that will be a pinch point, for lack of a better term, or a fulcrum point. And we do as well. And I believe that's why you've seen some scheduling and other things to occur after the students get back and see how people can adjust to this wave. So we're all tiptoeing forward until we can't, right? We want to absolutely do it safely. We want to provide competition opportunities. And if we can't do it in the fall, we'll move it back and try to do that. So I also am a parent of a Division I student athlete, and who I love more than anything in the world, and I would put him in our protocol any day of the week and sleep very soundly.
Thanks, man.
Mike Barber.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask first off, the Beamer Barn, the indoor facility, comfortable are you with kind of defining that as an outdoor space? Mark was kind of explaining how the CDC views things.
Yes, it is an open air facility. It's not heated or cooled. As y'all know, it's very tall in there with the air circulation. And we had I'll get some of my acronyms mixed up, but either the CDC or the Department of Health and others come in, say that it was okay to do that. And actually they talked about our model program, and we've had other people across campus come watch it. Others, not that it can't always be better, but we're not going to make that decision in a bubble. Others above us did. So we actually have 2.5 practice fields out there in the game field. And everything we've been doing in there is according to protocol, and we wouldn't have it any other way.
And understanding that obviously it's a moving target, you're not exactly sure what's coming this fall. Is the plan right now to have the football team stay in Roanoke in the hotel before home games, or have you altered that approach considering? Have you given that thought yet?
That's a good question, Mike. I would assume so, just because you can protect and bubble a little bit more there, but I haven't discussed that directly with Justin. As far as our away games, most of them, if not all of them, will be bus trips. The medical advisor for the NCAA, Dr. Hainline, recommends that over plane travel. We'll limit travel sizes. We won't take near as many people as we used to, and on and on and on. So a lot of that is being discussed, Mike, but I don't know about the night before games or on away games. Do we go down and back on game day? Certainly that's being talked about as well.
Thank you.
Andy Bitter.
Yeah, with obviously understanding that there's sort of a lot of scenarios jumping around right now. I'm curious, what are you planning for revenue-wise this year? Do you have like a worst case scenario in mind, and do you make any cuts right now in anticipation of probably not making the full amount revenue that you did last year?
It is deeply concerning. We have nearly a $100 million a year budget. I believe that there will be a financial impact. I believe that impact will be better known later this year after campus gets up and running. Can we have games? You know, the ticket component will certainly take a hit. Will television, will advertising, on down the line. So there is a big financial component. Again, not to over trump health, but the financial component is big. We're trying to make it work where we can continue providing opportunities for all these student athletes outside of football too, and keep it going. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the health side, and there's a lot of pressure financially.
Are there anticipated cuts that you've already made, trying to trim some stuff?
No, we have done some giving for those at the higher salary level. We have not yet implemented furloughs or cuts. The campus has not either. I hope we do not have to do that, but it's certainly, everything is on our list, and we should know more in that direction later this fall, early winter. And at some point that financial shoe will drop. So we've, yeah, I'll leave it at that. We don't know yet, but it is coming.
Mike McDonald.
I have no questions. Thank you.
All right, David de Guzman.
Hi, Whit. Thanks for the time. What are you learning from how other schools are handling the outbreaks? For example, Rutgers, I know Louisville today, they paused workouts for 4 sports programs. Are there any lessons being learned as, you know, we're all going through this?
Most of my information and peer information comes through our ACC athletic directors call, and with Mark Rogers, we certainly share the articles, et cetera. We are learning things from it, but as far as me personally, have I dove into it and drilled down on it? I have not. Really, we're all running pretty fast, and you see that, and it's just another challenge, makes you pause and wonder. And again, we're just going to keep moving forward as long as we can and do it right. And if we can't, we'll make adjustments at that time.
Just a quick question with the football schedule. Any progress with finding a non-conference opponent, knowing that that could obviously change as things progress?
Yeah, this whole situation will be potentially a pivot on a dime. We are close to that. It's not yet signed. It may be in the middle of the year, later in the season. I don't know that it would be the first game, and we're working on that and close to it. I believe the ACC wanted to get everybody locked in on that and then put out a schedule with dates, which I hope is forthcoming pretty soon.
David Hale.
Hey, Whit, just follow on that real quick. Has there been any discussion, you know, after the SEC decided to go conference only, on the ACC potentially reverting back to just 10 conference games and nixing that non-conference game?
We could. We have calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so something could certainly change. Again, aspirational. I like the equality of 12 conference games, 15 schools across, and if we can play week 1, we do, and we go all the way down through. However, the 10+1 model, making that +1 an extra home game, essentially helps us meet, if we're able to, certain benchmarks in the television and revenue sharing benchmarks for the revenue. So that +1 with 15 more home games would be really helpful. So I hope we keep it.
Do you have you had any conversations in terms of the games that have had to be canceled about how contracts might be held up with some of those smaller schools?
Yes, some preliminary conversations because we haven't signed anybody for our +1 yet, being very cautious on that. Obviously, a lot of people are involved looking at contracts. What does this mean? What does that mean? What breaches it? What voids it? Or can we move games in the future, et cetera? So that ought to be quite interesting after the dust settles nationally with all of those going on. At least with Penn State, we'll look at if we want to go there in 2025. I don't know that we would do that without a home game, or we reschedule, or we work it out with Penn State. But no, none of that is nailed down, and it is coming, and ought to be an interesting legal dialogue and contract law. That
Always fun. Thanks.
Administrative grade, yeah.
Alvin Wagner.
Good afternoon, Whit. Thanks for doing this with us. Has there been any conversation about the indoor sports? I mean, we're talking a lot about football here, but volleyball is supposed to be played here in the fall, and then obviously you have men's and women's basketball in the fall and in through the winter. Has there been any discussion about that and taking extra precautions because those are primarily just inside sports?
Yes, and I believe Dr. Rogers referred to this, but there's 3 tiers of high, medium, and low risk. Low risk might be golf and cross country, right? You're not around each other too much. You've got that. High risk would be football, wrestling, lacrosse, maybe volleyball. I'm shooting off the top of my head. And then the middle of the pack would be the baseballs, softballs, soccer, things such as that. So each one has its own protocol, but you're right. The indoor ones can cause you a little more trouble and a little more sensitivity. Not that any of them are easy.
Aaron McFarland.
Hey, Whit, thanks for your time today. You mentioned your son. I mean, obviously, your dad is a coach. You've been around athletics all your life. You were an athlete yourself. This is probably a better question for a coach, but I mean, you know the pulse, I guess, of your athletic department. The athletes in your department, do you get a sense that there's fear that was sort of touched on by Caleb there, or do you get a sense that it's gung-ho, let's get this done, or the general esprit de corps that you sense from your athletes in your department?
Sure. I believe that they are hungry to play. What I have heard back is the uncertainty for them is harder than knowing, obviously, and that's causing some angst and stress. And but so far, I have not gotten anything from a parent, a student. Maybe some of our other folks have, but I certainly hope they would report it up. And if a young person is not comfortable, then we'll work with them on a case-by-case basis on their scholarship, et cetera. The thing we don't know, guys, is it even going to be better in the spring or next fall? It's just really, really tough to tell. But the uncertainty and the stress, and imagine coaches trying to game plan for something a few weeks from now, and trying to stay focused on that. Players, I feel for them in that regard.
Mark Berman.
Good afternoon, Whit. You're a parent of a college football player whose school is not playing football this fall, so
Yes.
your family is not going to have to deal with the situation. Obviously, your school is still planning to play football this fall. If you take the point of view that it's safer for these football guys not to play than to play, just kind of what's your general justification for, as of now, going ahead with playing football?
I wouldn't say that it's, well, first off, it won't be my decision, Mark. It'll be the presidents of the ACC. That's not my decision. But right now, I feel like we can proceed as safe as this environment will let us, and we don't know that it will be better in springtime. But if that scale of justice, so to speak, tips the other way, we will get out of it in 2 seconds and find alternate options.
Mike Barber.
Yeah, Whit, sorry that this is a little bit off topic, but before all of this, the NCAA seem poised to pass that one-time transfer rule. I would anticipate maybe it'll come around next year. What is your opinion, your take on that rule?
I'm okay with it. Things need to change. If a general student can do it, why should a student athlete not be able to do it? I sure would love for them to be here a year in residence, but that may be too restrictive. So I get it, understand it. I do believe, though, a result of that, we probably have to go back and look at the initial counter limit, right? If you lose guys to opting out the draft, transfer portal, you can only sign 25. You may not even be able to get your 85 scholarship limit. So that's a long answer to say, I do believe that one's coming. I believe we can manage it. While there may have been initial rejection of it, it just makes too much sense and it's fair and it's what we should do. I believe name, image, and likeness will be a more challenging new era, but we'll cross that another day.
And if you're willing to share, do you go to the office, and what is a day in the life of Whit Babcock right now?
Yes, I go to the office. We have, campus has people that are deemed essential personnel. I don't know that I'm essential. I just signed up for that. And so there's only 3 or 4 of us on our hallway. It is all essential. You have to come through the same entrance. You get a temperature screen. You have to have a mask on. You wear a wristband to show that you've been screened. And we're very well separated. But for me, I still like that accountability of getting up and going to the office. So I usually go there in the morning, come home in the afternoon, take Zoom calls, et cetera. And then for my own sanity, I like to work outside. I'm not very handy inside, but maybe I get some of that from my dad. I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Mike Niziolek.
Yeah, you know, you have these weekly meetings with the ACC, and now big picture wise, you see conferences kind of going it alone. You see, obviously, departments are going to have budgetary shortfalls. Do you see big picture? You know, what are your feelings about? I mean, there's no playbook for this, but do you see? I mean, a kind of a dark horizon here that there's going to be long-term lasting effects to, you know, college athletics, and what's your level of concern about that?
Depends on which time of day you ask me. It's a bit of a roller coaster there. I don't know, but I will try. Unfortunately, I believe you're already starting to see some sports cuts. There probably will be some athletic departments that cannot make it. I'm certainly hopeful with the resources that we have in this league that we can make it through. And I believe we can and would love to do that and try to maintain every student athlete experience opportunity for all of our sports that we can. But yes, it will force some people to make some very hard decisions. And I don't know that it will ever return to normal. I believe it may be a 2 or 3 year blip, but you know, that and a cup of coffee, Mike. I'm crystal balling here. So that's the best I got. I'm concerned about it. I believe we can make it, but I worry about some of those schools that aren't getting the guaranteed money, that can't afford testing, that, you know, their universities may be struggling as well in budget cuts, et cetera. Maybe it's the market coming back a little bit, but I wish it wasn't in this format, COVID format.
David Teal.
Whit, how has your time on the football oversight committee informed what you're doing there at Virginia Tech and also your interactions with your ACC peers?
Yeah, just by chance, I was placed on the football oversight committee by the ACC. There's one from each of the Autonomy 5. There's FCS, there's ADs, a couple coaches, et cetera. And that football oversight group just reports up to the board of directors. So it is kind of where the buck stops. I've enjoyed being on it. It's hard, really smart people on there working a lot about it. And I like that I can be close to the information of what's going on. And then yes, if there's any pertinent information that needs to be shared, I share that with our athletic directors and commissioner in our ACC calls. And then we have Heather Like, the athletic director at Pitt, who sits on the NCAA council. and she does the same so that we can all be tied in. And our communication has gotten stronger through all of this.
And then you mentioned earlier a couple times spring football, if it came to that. Would that be problematic at all from a cash flow standpoint in terms of TV revenue and such if the season were delayed until the spring?
Dean Jordan in the ACC is better at this, but I believe if the games were played in this academic year, it would still qualify, but I need to double check on that one. I also like to use, late fall, early winter when we say spring. We could play later in the fall, double it up, et cetera. It's not ideal. We'd like to play football rather than no football, but it may come to that point of no football. But right now, not there. It's not close yet, but we have all sorts of contingency plans all over the place and have spent a lot of time working on things that may never happen.
Thank you.
We've got time for a couple more. David Hale.
Piggybacking on that, Whit, you had said earlier, push back when you have to and keep pushing back. What's sort of the drop dead deadlines in terms of when you decide, like, okay, this is a point we need to think this isn't going to work, let's push back? Like, you have sort of benchmarks in mind?
Yes and no. Right now, our plan is our plan, and until a politician or my president or the ACC says we're not or we're changing, we're gonna keep going with this. So those presidents meet once a week, and I know this is still on their radar and will still be discussed as we get closer. Those presidents just felt through the ACC medical group that we could keep, like I said, tiptoeing along and moving down that course. And if we needed to be nimble, we would do that. So as of now, that's the plan. And our first game would be September 12th. And that's where we are.
And I know the NCAA has talked about, mandating that scholarships remain intact for anyone who might opt out. Have you heard anything or had any discussions in terms of what that would mean for eligibility for players, though? Would they be able to keep that year down the road?
Yeah, it's pretty complex, right? Because you had the NCAA set the precedent of spring sports being able to hold on to that year. Is that precedent going to continue? Yes or no? Or if they redshirt and do that, it will really, it will be a new era for our coaches on roster management. When you have kids coming in that you've agreed to a scholarship, you have them here. There is a lot of complexity to that, right? You have to honor what you have. You have to honor what you've promised and then still manage your roster and scholarship numbers. So that one is for another day too, but it is definitely up there on the hot button issues.
Thanks, Whit. Appreciate it all the time.
Mark Berman.
Wanted to just to clarify, make sure I understood your answer to Chris's question. When he was saying once you have all the fall sports athletes here during the season, testing every week, you said the 6 figures. Is that 6 figures per week?
No, that would be for a year. Yeah, and we have, I believe we have, I guess there could be 1 or 2 that aren't here, but we have every fall sport student athlete essentially in Blacksburg right now. So that's approximately 200, and the others will be coming in. We've delayed some of the other sports coming in. We also have the basketballs in. So we may have up to 250, really about half of our student athletes in town right now, mostly off campus, if not all off campus.
You said for a year, you mean school year, or you just mean the fall year?
Heck, Mark, I don't know. Fall and spring. Let's call it that. Yeah.
All right, one more, Mike Barber.
Yeah, what you've mentioned a few times, obviously the national impact on the economy and all that. I'm curious, where are season ticket sales at? Have they been sluggish, understandably, because of the economy? Have they been where they usually are? Did people just flat out stop buying? Know what's happening?
We actually did pretty well on the tickets. We were planning on a record year and really bouncing it back, and our ticket office and Hokie Club deserve a lot of credit. I'm going to say it's around 4,000 season tickets down, which isn't great, but all things considered, we're really pleased with that. And then our ticket office people, our Hokie Club people, and working with students and on, they've been hustling a lot too and modeling a lot. But we were pleasantly surprised with our giving. been very pleasantly surprised with their tickets. Obviously, we've had some more at risk. People say, I can't do it this year, and certainly we understand.
And without maybe revealing anything too private about them, have you had any coaches or staff tell you, hey, I'm not comfortable coming back this year? I know here in the local schools, that's been a question with teachers and staff.
No, no one has, but I also don't claim that out of every employee, every student athlete, that there might be somebody that's uncomfortable, but no, it has not gotten up to me.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get one more with Mike Niselik and we'll call it a day.
Is the athletic performance center and weight room still on the previous scheduled timeline for being open this month, I think was what they said previously?
Yes, thanks for asking. We have 2 projects going on. Both will conclude this fall, September, October. The football strength and conditioning center, all the team meeting rooms, we will have renovated every single square foot of the Merriman Center and Jamerson Center, built in 83 and 96 respectively when these are all finished. Construction has been able to go ahead of schedule and on budget, so we feel good about that. Then we have a university residence hall coming online next fall where our freshman student athletes will stay. We're thrilled about that. And then our next fundraising push and emphasis is on undergirding our football recruiting staff on football and scholarships in a lot of ways. So our facility stuff has been great, and now there's a bit of a shift back to recruiting infrastructure, things such as that. And then Castle Coliseum will be a part of our next capital campaign as well. We were going to release all of that in April, the week of the spring game, and then all this stuff happened and we've just pushed it back. So we will have a big announcement on that one day, but we've continued to raise money through Zooms and been pretty successful at that. So I've learned some new things over that.
So you want to, you added two positions recruiting for the football. So you're hoping to add more than staff through fundraising?
Yes. And right now yes.
All right. Well, it looks like Whit.
I believe when I got here, we had 1. Did I freeze up?
Yeah, you froze up. But we'd like that answer.
All right. Football positions, yes. You can really call analysts, quality control, recruiting people. They're all involved in recruiting. So people can show numbers in different ways, but we are a little bit behind Clemson, North Carolina, a few others, and we want to ramp up in that. So we were at 0 or 1, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago, got it up to 3, 5, 7 now. And I believe you'll see 2 to 4 more coming down the pike. But in this time of HR and money being so tight, we need to make sure we have the funding in hand to cover it for a multiple of years to be able to justify doing it. So on the football component, that's our big emphasis right now.